The transport ship Stellar Meridian hummed through the void between star systems, carrying its mixed cargo of alien cadets toward the Galactic Defense Academy on Prime. In the cramped communal quarters, tension crackled like static electricity as various species clustered into their usual groups. Maya sat alone on her narrow bunk, methodically checking her gear for the 100th time since departure. Her small human frame seemed almost fragile compared to the towering warriors nearby, their crystalline exoskeletons clicking as they moved. The serpentine coiled together in animated conversation, their scaled heads weaving hypnotic patterns. Even the stocky, fur-covered seemed more imposing than the solitary human girl. "Look at the little pink thing," hissed a particularly large whose blue-tinged carapace marked him as nobility among his kind. Still playing with her primitive toys. Maya's hands never paused as she inspected her sidearm, a simple kinetic weapon that fired metal projectiles. Compared to the plasma rifles and energy weapons the other cadets carried, it looked like an antique. But Maya had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving. "I heard humans can barely survive without their environmental suits," added, whose emerald scales caught the artificial light. "Something about needing perfect atmospheric conditions to function." A few other cadets chuckled at this, the sound creating an odd harmony of clicks, hisses, and rumbles from different vocal structures. Maya finally looked up, meeting their gazes with calm brown eyes that held no trace of anger or embarrassment. "Is that what you heard?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying clearly through the compartment despite its softness. "Everyone knows humans are the weakest species in the galaxy," continued, emboldened by what he mistook for timidity. "Your people only got into the academy because the council felt sorry for such a primitive race. Charity cases, every one of you." Maya nodded thoughtfully, as if considering his words seriously. "That's an interesting perspective, you might be right." This seeming agreement only encouraged more taunts from the group. Kay, one of the furry, lumbered over with his heavy gait. "My cousin graduated from the academy 3 cycles ago," he rumbled in his deep voice. "Says the human cadets spend most of their time in medical bay, too fragile for real training." "Can't handle standard gravity without assistance," added another. "Need special equipment just to breathe properly." Maya finished her equipment check and carefully stowed everything in her regulation pack. She moved with an economy of motion that spoke of long practice, each item finding its proper place without wasted effort. "You're probably all correct," she said, standing up from her bunk. At barely over 5.5 feet tall, she was dwarfed by most of the other cadets, yet something in her bearing made several of them take an unconscious step back. "Humans are definitely the weakest species physically, slowest too, I'd imagine." His mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his people. Finally, the little pink admits the obvious truth. Maybe humans aren't as stupid as they look. "Oh, we're probably quite stupid compared to most species," Maya agreed cheerfully. "After all, look where it got us." She gestured around the transport ship with one small hand. "Here we are, the supposedly weakest, slowest, most fragile species in the galaxy, heading to the most prestigious military academy in known space, right alongside representatives from every major civilization." The casual confidence in her voice gave some of the mockery's edge a different quality. A few of the more observant cadets began to sense something beneath her apparent agreement. "The Academy accepts charity cases to maintain political relationships," said, though her voice carried less certainty than before. "Everyone knows this." "Everyone seems to know quite a lot about humans," Maya observed. "Tell me, what else does everyone know about my species?" This chest plates puffed out with pride. "Yours has weak gravity. Your atmosphere is thin and barely breathable. Your people require constant medical attention to survive in standard galactic environments. You have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced senses, basically useless for military applications." "Fascinating," Maya said, nodding as if receiving valuable education. "And yet here I am, how curious." She began walking toward the compartment's small viewing portal, her footsteps silent on the metal deck. Several cadets noticed this despite themselves. Most species made some sound when they moved, whether the click of claws, the whisper of scales, or the thud of heavy feet. Maya moved like smoke given form. "Perhaps," she said, gazing out at the stars, "everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to know about humans." The words carried an odd weight that made conversation falter. In the sudden quiet, the ship's engines seemed louder, their steady thrum filling the space between heartbeats. Commander, a veteran officer who served as their transport supervisor, entered the compartment for his routine inspection. His carapace spoke of decades in military service, and his movements carried the crisp efficiency of long experience. "Cadets," he announced in standard Galactic, his translator rendering his clicks and buzzes into comprehensible speech. "We arrive at Prime in 18 standard hours. Use this time to prepare mentally as well as physically. The Academy's entrance trials begin immediately upon landing." Several cadets straightened nervously. The Academy's trials were legendary throughout the galaxy, grueling tests designed to separate true military potential from mere academic achievement. Failure meant immediate expulsion and return home in disgrace. "Commander," spoke up with the casual arrogance of someone accustomed to privilege, "what can you tell us about the trials? Surely someone of your experience has insights to share." His compound eyes fixed on the young. "The trials test everything you think you know about warfare, survival, and yourself. Many cadets discover they know far less than they believed." His gaze swept the compartment, pausing briefly on Maya before moving on. "Some learn that strength comes in forms they never considered. Others find that weakness hides in places they thought were strong." "Respectfully, Commander," pressed another cadet, a tall Etherian whose translucent blue skin gave him an otherworldly appearance. "Can you be more specific? What should we expect?" "Expect to be surprised," Cadet replied. "The Academy has trained warriors for over 1,000 years. In that time, they have learned that making assumptions about capability based on species, size, or apparent strength is a luxury that gets soldiers killed in real combat." Maya continued staring out the portal, but several cadets noticed she was listening intently to the commander's words. "The trials will test your adaptability, your resourcefulness, and your ability to function when everything you thought you understood no longer applies," continued. "They will place you in situations where your natural advantages become liabilities and force you to find strength in places you never looked." "What about species-specific accommodations?" asked. "Surely the Academy recognizes that different races have different capabilities and limitations." His mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "The Academy recognizes that enemy forces rarely provide accommodations for your species' particular needs. A warrior's exoskeleton means nothing to a void wraith that attacks through dimensional tiers. Us enhanced reflexes are useless against an enemy that moves faster than thought." He moved deeper into the compartment, his experienced eyes cataloging each cadet's equipment and bearing. "The galaxy is full of threats that care nothing for what your species considers normal or natural. The Academy prepares you for that reality." "And humans," couldn't resist asking, "how do they prepare the weakest species for such trials?" Maya finally turned from the viewing portal, her expression mildly curious as she awaited the commander's response. His gaze fixed on with the intensity of a targeting laser. "An interesting question, young. Let me ask you one in return. What do you know about human military history?" "They have no significant military history," replied confidently. "Humans only achieved 2 centuries ago. They're newcomers to galactic civilization." "Indeed," agreed. "And in those 2 centuries, how many military conflicts have humans been involved in?" The question seemed designed to emphasize human inexperience, so answered eagerly. "Very few, I would imagine. They lack the resources and experience for significant warfare." 17 major conflicts," Maya said quietly from her position by the portal. 43 smaller engagements, 12 peacekeeping operations, 6 rescue missions in hostile territory." The precision of her answer drew surprised looks from several cadets. "For such a weak and inexperienced species," observed, "humans seem to find themselves involved in military operations with remarkable frequency. How curious." "Coincidence?" insisted, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Or political maneuvering by stronger species using humans as expendable forces?" "Possible," the commander agreed. "Of course, that raises another question. If humans are as fragile and useless as you suggest, why would any military commander risk using them in actual combat? Surely such weak forces would be more liability than asset." The logic of this observation created an uncomfortable silence. Several cadets began exchanging uncertain glances. Perhaps, Maya said in her soft voice, the answer lies in understanding the difference between weakness and vulnerability. Explain, commanded, though his tone suggested he already knew what she would say. Maya moved away from the portal with that same silent grace, her small form somehow commanding attention despite its apparent insignificance. Weakness is an inability to respond to challenges. Vulnerability is simply a lack of natural protection. She gestured to crystalline exoskeleton. Your carapace protects you from many threats, but it also limits your flexibility and speed. Is this weakness or vulnerability? The mandibles clicked irritably, but he had no immediate answer. Us scales provide armor and their enhanced reflexes offer superior reaction time, Maya continued, nodding to. But they require specific temperature ranges to function optimally, and their metabolisms demand frequent feeding. Weakness or vulnerability? This is wordplay, Kay rumbled dismissively. Physical strength and natural weapons are clear advantages. Humans have neither. True, Maya agreed readily. Humans are physically weak compared to most galactic species. We have no natural armor, no enhanced senses, no environmental adaptations that allow us to thrive in extreme conditions. She paused, her brown eyes reflecting something that made several cadets shift uncomfortably. But we do have one interesting characteristic that seems to puzzle other species. Which is, asked, though his tone suggested this was a test rather than genuine curiosity. We don't know when to quit, Maya said simply. The words hung in the air like a challenge, simple enough to understand yet carrying implications that took longer to process. Elaborate, the commander ordered. Maya's expression remained calm and matter-of-fact as she spoke. Most species have evolved survival instincts that tell them when a situation is hopeless, when to retreat, when to surrender, when to accept that they cannot overcome a particular challenge. These are sensible, logical responses that prevent unnecessary casualties and preserve resources for winnable battles. Several cadets nodded at this obviously correct assessment. Humans seem to have missed that particular evolutionary development, Maya continued. We have a disturbing tendency to continue fighting even when defeat is certain, to attempt solutions even when problems appear impossible, to keep trying even when logic clearly indicates we should stop. That sounds like stupidity rather than strength, observed. Oh, it absolutely is stupid, Maya agreed cheerfully. Completely illogical and tactically unsound. Any reasonable military commander would consider it a serious flaw in human psychology. Her smile carried no warmth as she added, right up until the moment when the impossible becomes possible. Commander's compound eyes fixed on her with sharp interest. Cadet, are you suggesting that human military doctrine is based on refusing to accept logical limitations? I wouldn't presume to speak for human military doctrine, Commander, Maya replied respectfully. I can only observe that humans have a documented tendency to attempt solutions that other species consider impossible. Sometimes this leads to spectacular failures. Sometimes. She gestured around the transport ship again. Sometimes it leads to the weakest species in the galaxy earning seats at the most prestigious military academy in known space. The implications of her words settled over the compartment like a slowly gathering storm. Several cadets began reconsidering their earlier assumptions about human capabilities. Interesting perspective, Cadet, said neutrally. We shall see how your species' particular approaches serve you in the upcoming trials. As the commander continued his inspection and moved on to other areas of the ship, conversation resumed among the cadets, but the tone had shifted noticeably. Where before there had been casual mockery, now there was an undercurrent of uncertainty. Maya returned to her bunk and resumed her quiet preparations, but several cadets found themselves watching her with new attention. Her movements remained economical and precise, but now they wondered if what they had mistaken for nervous fidgeting was actually something else entirely. She talks a good game, muttered to his companions, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. We'll see how well human stubbornness serves her when the real testing begins. Maya overheard this comment and looked up with that same mild expression she had worn throughout the conversation. You're absolutely right, she said pleasantly. We'll definitely see. Something in her tone made even the largest cadets feel suddenly less certain about what they thought they knew about humans. As the transport ship continued its journey toward Prime, the conversations grew quieter and more thoughtful. Outside the viewing portal, the stars wheeled slowly in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the concerns of the young beings who would soon face trials designed to separate those destined for greatness from those merely seeking glory. Maya sat on her narrow bunk, hands steady as she made final adjustments to equipment that looked primitive compared to the advanced technology around her. But appearances, as she had learned long ago, could be very deceiving indeed. The Academy awaited, with its legendary trials and the promise of either triumph or failure. For most cadets, this represented the culmination of years of preparation and the beginning of prestigious military careers. For Maya, it was simply another opportunity to demonstrate why humans had earned their reputation for turning impossible situations into unexpected victories. The transport ship hummed through space, carrying its cargo of young warriors toward their destiny. In 18 hours, they would learn whether their assumptions about strength, weakness, and the nature of warfare itself were as solid as they believed. The Academy's landing platform stretched across the horizon like a vast metal ocean under Prime's twin suns. Gleaming transport ships descended in carefully choreographed patterns, disgorging hundreds of cadets from across the galaxy onto the polished surface. The air thrummed with the sounds of different languages, the click of claws on metal, and the nervous energy of young beings about to face their greatest challenge. Maya stepped off the stellar meridian with her small pack secured across her shoulders, her movements calm and purposeful despite the chaos around her. The Academy's towers rose in the distance, their crystalline spires reaching toward the purple sky like monuments to military excellence. Each structure told stories of legendary graduates who had gone on to shape galactic history. "Formation ranks," boomed a voice that cut through the noise like a plasma blade. "All cadets will form processing lines according to species designation." The speaker was General, or a massive draconian whose scales shifted from deep green to bronze in the alien sunlight. His reputation preceded him throughout the galaxy, veteran of the Void Wars, architect of the defense strategy, and the Academy's most demanding instructor. Scars crisscrossed his visible scales, each one a testament to battles fought and survived. Cadets scrambled to organize themselves into the designated formations. Clustered together, their crystalline forms creating geometric patterns that caught the light. Coiled into neat rows, their serpentine bodies swaying with subtle communication gestures. Formed sturdy squares, their fur ruffling in the alien breeze. Maya found herself in a much smaller group, only 12 humans among the hundreds of cadets. They were scattered individuals from different worlds and backgrounds, united only by their species and their presence at this moment. She recognized none of them, but noted their bearing with professional interest. Each carried themselves with the quiet confidence of someone who had already overcome significant challenges just to reach this point. "Pitiful turnout from the human sectors," commented loudly enough for nearby cadets to hear. "Barely a squad's worth. No wonder they cluster together, safety in numbers for the weak." Several clicked their mandibles in amusement, but Maya noticed that fewer cadets joined the laughter than had during their journey. Word of their earlier conversations seemed to have spread, creating pockets of uncertainty about previously held assumptions. General Or's enhanced hearing caught the comment despite the distance and noise. His massive head swiveled toward the formations, golden eyes fixing on with predatory intensity. "Cadet," the general's voice boomed across the platform, "did you have something enlightening to share with your fellow students?" His exoskeleton clicked nervously, but his noble breeding wouldn't allow him to back down publicly. "Merely observing the modest representation from certain sectors, General." "Observing," Or repeated, his tone giving the word unpleasant weight. "How fortunate that you begin your academy experience with such keen powers of observation. You will have ample opportunity to develop them further." The general's attention swept over the assembled cadets like a scanning beam, cataloging every detail of their appearance, posture, and equipment. His gaze lingered on Maya for a moment longer than the others, though his expression remained unreadable. "Cadets," he announced, his voice carrying easily across the vast platform, "welcome to the Galactic Defense Academy. For the next 72 hours, you will undergo trials designed to test every aspect of your military potential. Physical capability, tactical thinking, leadership under pressure, adaptability to unexpected circumstances, and mental resilience when faced with seemingly impossible challenges." He began packing in front of the formations, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. Approximately 60% of you will fail these trials. You will be returned to your with the knowledge that you were found wanting when tested against galactic standards of military excellence. A murmur of nervous energy rippled through the assembled cadets. Everyone knew the Academy's reputation for stringent standards, but hearing the failure rate spoken aloud made it feel suddenly real. Those who succeed will begin 4 years of intensive training designed to forge you into officers capable of defending galactic civilization against threats, both known and unimaginable. You will emerge as leaders, strategists, and warriors whose skills and judgment can be trusted with the lives of others. The general stopped his packing and fixed the assembly with a gaze that seemed to penetrate directly into each cadet's soul. The trials begin now. You have 30 minutes to reach the Omega complex located 17 kilometers from this position. Any cadet who fails to arrive within the time limit will be immediately returned to there. Transportation is not provided. Environmental suits are not available. You must use your own capabilities and resources to complete this first challenge. Several cadets began looking around frantically, trying to spot landmarks or calculate routes. Others immediately began running in what they hoped was the correct direction. Oh, General, or added with what might have been amusement, the Academy's training zones include active gravitational anomalies, atmospheric variations, and mobile obstacle courses. I'm sure your keen observational skills will help you navigate these minor complications. With that, he activated a personal transport device and vanished in a shimmer of energy, leaving hundreds of cadets staring at the empty space where he had stood. Chaos erupted immediately. Cadets activated their natural direction-finding abilities, orienting themselves using magnetic field detection, began tasting the air with forked tongues, seeking chemical traces that might indicate proper routes, simply began running in their chosen direction, relying on natural endurance to overcome navigational challenges. Maya remained perfectly still for 3 full seconds, her eyes closed as she processed the available information. When she opened them, her expression had shifted from mild interest to something much more focused. She pulled out what appeared to be an ancient handheld device, the kind of primitive navigation tool that other species had abandoned centuries ago. Several nearby cadets glanced at it with barely concealed disdain. In an age of quantum positioning and neural interface guidance systems, Maya's device looked like a relic from a museum. Seriously, laughed one of the Etherian cadets. A magnetic compass, what's next, star charts drawn on animal skins. Maya ignored the commentary and took a careful reading, then cross-referenced it with the position of the twin suns overhead. Her fingers moved over the device with practiced efficiency, making calculations that seemed absurdly complex for such a simple tool. While other cadets activated sophisticated sensors and called up holographic displays, Maya simply put her antique compass away and began walking in a direction that seemed arbitrary to casual observers. "Wrong way, human," called out as he charged past with a group of cadets. "The complex is northwest of here." Maya didn't respond or change course. She maintained a steady pace that seemed almost leisurely compared to the frantic sprinting happening around her. Several of the human cadets hesitated, torn between following their own species mate and trusting their technological guidance systems. After a moment of uncertainty, most chose to follow the crowd. Only one human cadet, a tall, athletic-looking young man, fell into step beside Maya. He said by way of introduction, "From the Titan colonies, either you know something the rest of us don't, or we're about to fail spectacularly together." "Maya," she replied, maintaining her steady pace. "From Earth, and I suspect we're about to learn some interesting lessons about the difference between sophisticated and effective." Glanced around at the cadets disappearing in other directions, many of them using advanced technology to navigate. "You really think they're all going the wrong way?" "I think," Maya said thoughtfully, "that anyone who designs military trials for an institution this prestigious probably accounts for the obvious solutions." As if summoned by her words, a deep rumble began building in the distance. The ground vibrated beneath their feet, and the air filled with a sound like massive machinery coming to life. "Gravitational anomalies and mobile obstacle courses," said, remembering the general's casual warning. "You don't suppose—" He never finished the sentence. Ahead of them, the landscape began shifting. What had appeared to be solid ground revealed itself as sophisticated camouflaged platforms that could move, rotate, and reconfigure themselves into completely different terrain. Gravity wells activated in seemingly random patterns, creating zones where the laws of physics behaved in unexpected ways. The cadets who had charged off confidently in various directions suddenly found themselves dealing with ground that shifted beneath their feet, paths that led into gravitational mazes, and routes that simply vanished as the terrain reconfigured itself. Northwest was the obvious choice, Meyer observed as they watched group struggle with a section of ground that had tilted to a 60-degree angle. Clear sight lines, direct route, minimum distance. Exactly what you'd choose if you wanted to get somewhere quickly using conventional navigation. And exactly where you'd put the most challenging obstacles if you wanted to test something other than conventional navigation, realized. Maya nodded approvingly. The Academy doesn't want to know if we can read a map or follow directions. They want to know if we can adapt when the map becomes meaningless and the directions lead into traps. They continued their steady pace along a route that seemed to curve away from their destination, taking them through areas that appeared less direct but proved to be surprisingly stable. Maya's ancient compass remained unused, but her path showed no hesitation or uncertainty. "How did you know?" asked as they easily walked through an area where several were struggling with suddenly reversed gravity. "I didn't," Maya admitted, "but I paid attention to something else during the general's briefing." "Which was?" Maya gestured toward the chaos around them with one small hand. "He said the trials test adaptability to unexpected circumstances and mental resilience when faced with seemingly impossible challenges. Notice anything about this situation?" Considered the question as they navigated around a section where the ground had become quicksand-like. "It's designed to be impossible using standard approaches." "Exactly. So the question becomes, what approach do you use when standard methods won't work?" They crested a small hill and could see the Omega complex in the distance, a cluster of buildings that seemed to shimmer and shift as they watched, as if the entire structure existed in several dimensions simultaneously. "The direct routes are all compromised," observed, watching various groups of cadets struggling with increasingly bizarre obstacles. "But your path follows the old principles," Maya finished. "When you can't go through something, you go around it. When you can't trust technology, you trust observation. When you can't rely on speed, you rely on persistence." They encountered their first real challenge as they approached a ravine that cut across their path. The gap was too wide to jump, even for species with enhanced physical capabilities. Advanced scanning showed no way across, no bridges, no safe fording points, nothing but a straight drop into darkness. Other cadets were using various technological solutions. Flying species attempted aerial crossing, only to discover energy barriers that made flight impossible. Others tried using their technological gear to construct temporary bridges or climbing aids. Maya simply sat down at the edge of the ravine and began unpacking her primitive-looking equipment. "Please tell me you're not planning to build a rope bridge with that gear," said, eyeing her simple tools skeptically. "Nothing so dramatic," Maya replied, pulling out what appeared to be an ancient spyglass. She extended it and began studying the far side of the ravine with methodical care. "What are you looking for?" "Proof that sometimes the simplest solutions are the right ones." She handed him the spyglass and pointed to a specific spot on the far side. Through the magnification, could see what appeared to be natural handholds carved into the rock face. "A climbing route," he realized. "But it's on the other side. How do we get there to use it?" Maya was already moving, following the ravine's edge rather than attempting to cross it. "We don't cross here. We find where the ravine ends and cross there." It seemed impossibly simple, but as they walked along the edge, the ravine gradually narrowed until it became a gap that could be crossed with a careful jump. Once on the other side, the carved handholds Maya had spotted led up to a trail that connected directly to the Omega complex. They arrived at the complex with nearly 10 minutes to spare, finding General or waiting with a small group of other Academy instructors. The complex's buildings remained stable now that they were close enough to see them clearly, revealing elegant architecture that spoke of advanced engineering principles. Cadets and the General acknowledged their arrival with a nod. Please join the others who have successfully completed the first trial. Maya looked around, surprised to see only about 30 cadets gathered in the waiting area. Given that several hundred had started the trial, the success rate was much lower than she had expected. The others are still navigating the course, General Orr explained, nodding her expression. Those who chose direct routes discovered that the Academy's obstacles become progressively more challenging the more technology you use to overcome them. Several groups are currently dealing with gravitational mazes that adapt to their navigation systems. Whistled softly. Adaptive obstacles, the more sophisticated your approach, the more sophisticated the countermeasures. Precisely, confirmed the general. Military academies throughout history have discovered that teaching cadets to rely too heavily on technology creates a dangerous vulnerability. When that technology fails or is compromised, those who depend on it become helpless. Maya noticed that most of the successful cadets came from species known for more primitive or traditional approaches to problem solving. Very few or Etherians had made it through, despite their advanced technological capabilities. The Academy doesn't oppose technology, General Orr continued as if reading her thoughts. But we insist that our graduates understand the difference between tools and crutches. A true military officer must be capable of accomplishing their mission regardless of what resources are available. One of the other instructors, a sleek-furred creature Maya didn't recognize, approached with what appeared to be evaluation tablets. General, the scanning systems are detecting some interesting approaches among the cadets still in transit. Oh, Orr's golden eyes gleamed with interest. Please elaborate. Several groups have begun abandoning their technological aids and adopting more primitive navigation methods. One noble appears to have discarded his quantum compass and is now following game trails. A group have stopped using chemical analysis and are simply following scent markers left by successful cadets. The general's expression might have been approval. Adaptation under pressure, excellent, how are they progressing? Much faster now that they've their approach. We estimate another 15 to 20 cadets will reach the complex within the time limit. Maya felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sympathy. It was gratifying to know that other cadets were learning the same lessons she had anticipated, but she also understood the frustration of discovering that your greatest strengths could become weaknesses in the right circumstances. Cadet, General Orr said suddenly, what do you believe was the primary objective of this first trial? The question felt like a test, but Maya had learned to trust her instincts when dealing with complex problems. Adaptation, sir. Specifically, testing our ability to recognize when our normal approaches won't work and find alternatives. Partially correct, what else? Maya considered the question more deeply, thinking about the trial's structure and the Academy's reputation. Humility, sir. Learning that being the most advanced or sophisticated doesn't guarantee success. Better, what else? This time Maya took longer to think, watching the cadets still arriving as they struggled with obstacles that had seemed impossible just minutes before. Respect, she said finally, for the fact that every approach, no matter how primitive it might seem, could be the right solution under the right circumstances. General Orr's features shifted into what might have been a smile. Excellent, cadet. You will find that lesson particularly relevant in the trials to come. As the time limit approached, more cadets began arriving in small groups, all of them showing signs of having abandoned their original strategies in favor of simpler approaches. Arrived with two other, his exoskeleton bearing scratches that spoke of difficult climbing, his earlier arrogance replaced by thoughtful consideration. When the time limit expired, 53 cadets had successfully reached the Omega complex. General Orr addressed the assembled group with something that might have been satisfaction. Congratulations! You have completed the first trial and learned the Academy's first lesson. Sometimes the most effective approach is the simplest one. However, this was merely the beginning. The next trial will test what you've learned about the relationship between complexity and effectiveness. He gestured toward the complex's main building, whose architecture seemed to shift subtly even as they watched. Inside this building is a tactical simulation chamber. You will be divided into teams of mixed species and given a scenario that requires cooperative problem-solving under extreme pressure. Success requires not just individual capability, but the ability to integrate different approaches and perspectives into effective group action. Maya felt her pulse quicken with anticipation. Group dynamics added layers of complexity that individual trials couldn't test. How well could beings from different species, with different instincts and capabilities, work together when their survival depended on it? Teams will be assigned randomly, the general continued, ensuring that you cannot rely on familiar species-specific communication patterns or established hierarchies. You will have 6 hours to complete a scenario that has never been solved by any previous group in less than 8 hours. The implication hung in the air like a challenge. The Academy was asking them not just to succeed, but to exceed the performance of every previous group of cadets. Report to the complex in 30 minutes for team assignments, General Moore concluded. Use this time to consider what you have learned and what you still need to learn. As cadets began moving toward the complex, Maya found herself walking alongside. The proud seemed subdued, his earlier confidence tempered by recent experience. That was educational, he admitted quietly. I may have made some incorrect assumptions about effective military approaches. Maya glanced at him with mild surprise. Admitting error was difficult for most beings, but particularly challenging for nobles trained from hatching to project confidence and authority. We all did, she replied diplomatically. The first trial was designed to challenge everyone's assumptions about how things should work. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Your species' approach proved quite effective. Perhaps there is something to be learned from human methods after all. Maybe, Maya said, though her tone suggested the conversation was far from over. But I suspect we're all about to learn that what worked in the first trial might be completely wrong for the second one. As they approached the complex, Maya reflected on the Academy's teaching methods. Each trial seemed designed not just to test capability, but to force cadets to question their fundamental assumptions about strength, effectiveness, and success. The tactical simulation chamber stretched beyond sight in all directions, its walls shifting between different environments like a kaleidoscope of possible worlds. Maya found herself standing in what appeared to be the bridge of a starship, though the details flickered and changed as the simulation prepared to initialize. Her team assignment had proven interesting, if challenging. The human from Titan colonies provided familiar communication patterns, brought tactical analysis capabilities, though his earlier arrogance had been replaced by cautious consideration. The female offered enhanced sensory input and rapid reflexes. The team was completed by a massive draconian whose scaled hide and natural weapons made him a formidable physical presence. Diverse group, observed quietly as they oriented themselves to their surroundings. Different species, different capabilities, different approaches to problem solving. Different potential failure points, added with characteristic directness. Coordination between dissimilar species has historically proven challenging in high-stress situations. His forked tongue flicked out, tasting the artificial air of the simulation chamber. Environmental parameters are shifting. The simulation is preparing to establish specific scenario conditions. In remained silent, but his golden eyes tracked every detail of their environment with predatory focus. Draconian species were known for their combat instincts and strategic thinking, but also for their tendency to dominate group dynamics through sheer physical presence. Maya studied her teammates with professional interest, noting their positioning and body language. Each species carried their natural behavioral patterns into the group dynamic, creating invisible tensions that could either enhance their effectiveness or tear the team apart under pressure. Attention, cadets, General Orr's voice echoed through the chamber from hidden speakers. Your scenario is now initializing. You are the senior staff of the exploration vessel Harmony's Edge, currently investigating reports of missing colonies in the sector. Your ship has just emerged from hyperspace to discover that the sector's primary star is dying ahead of schedule, creating gravitational instabilities that threaten all remaining inhabited worlds. The chamber around them into a detailed starship bridge, complete with sensor stations, tactical displays, and communication arrays. Data streams began flowing across multiple screens, showing a star system in catastrophic decline. Your mission parameters are as follows, the general's voice continued. 7 inhabited worlds remain in the sector, containing approximately 40 million sentient beings. The star's accelerated decay will render all 7 worlds uninhabitable within 6 hours. Your ship's maximum evacuation capacity is 5 million beings per trip, and a complete evacuation run to the nearest safe system requires 4 hours round trip. Maya felt her stomach tight as the mathematics became clear. Even with optimal efficiency, they could evacuate at most 15 million beings before the star's collapse made further rescue impossible. 25 million sentient beings would die unless they found an alternative solution. Your ship's arsenal includes standard exploration equipment, emergency medical facilities, and limited military hardware appropriate for a science vessel. The sector's infrastructure has been compromised by stellar radiation, leaving most planets without functional capabilities. The scenario begins now. Silence filled the bridge for several heartbeats as each cadet absorbed the scope of the challenge. Traditional evacuation procedures would condemn the majority of the sector's population to death. There had to be another approach, but finding it would require capabilities none of them possessed individually. Initial assessment, said, taking charge with typical efficiency. We need complete sensor data on all 7 worlds, population distributions, remaining infrastructure, geological stability profiles. Was already moving toward the sensor station, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to process multiple data streams simultaneously. Analyzing now. 3 worlds show critical geological instability. They will become uninhabitable within 4 hours. 2 worlds have approximately 2 hours longer. The remaining 2 worlds might survive an additional hour beyond standard projections. That gives us a triage priority, observed, studying the tactical displays. We focus evacuation efforts on the most stable worlds first, buying time to develop alternatives for the others. In rumbled disagreement, his deep voice carrying draconian authority. Standard evacuation procedures will fail regardless of triage priorities. We require alternative solutions. Maya stood quietly at the communications station, her fingers moving over the controls with practiced efficiency. While her teammates debated evacuation priorities, she was systematically contacting every ship, station, and facility within range of their position. "What's your assessment?" asked, noticing her activity. "Any support vessels in range?" "Negative," Maya replied, though she continued working. "No ships capable of significant evacuation operations, but I'm detecting something else." She transferred her findings to the main display, showing a network of automated mining stations scattered throughout the asteroid belts of 3 nearby systems. "Mining stations," said, studying the data. "What good are those? They're automated facilities with minimal life support." "They're also equipped with large-scale material transportation systems," Maya pointed out. "Mass drivers, cargo containers, and industrial transporters designed to move massive quantities of raw materials." His head turned toward Maya with sharp interest. "You're suggesting we convert mining equipment into evacuation systems?" "Not exactly," Maya said, her fingers flying over the controls as she ran calculations. "I'm suggesting we think about the problem differently. Everyone assumes we need to move people to safety. What if instead we make safety come to them?" The bridge fell silent as her teammates processed this conceptual shift. His mandibles clicked rapidly as he ran tactical assessments. "Elaborate," he commanded, though his tone suggested growing interest rather than dismissal. Maya called up stellar engineering data on the main display, showing the dying star's composition and decay patterns. The star's accelerated decay is caused by artificial destabilization. Someone or something has been feeding exotic matter into the stellar core, causing premature collapse. "Sabotage?" asked grimly. "Unknown but irrelevant for our immediate purposes," Maya continued. "What matters is that the destabilization process is artificial, which means it might be reversible if we can neutralize the exotic matter feeding the reaction." His exoskeleton clicked with agitation. "Even if that's possible, we lack the technology for stellar engineering on that scale. Our ship is equipped for exploration and limited emergency response, not astrophysical intervention." "Our ship is," Maya agreed. "But the mining stations have the necessary industrial capacity if we coordinate them properly." She transferred new data to the tactical display, showing the locations and capabilities of 17 automated mining installations within range. Mass drivers for accelerating material to significant fractions of light speed. Industrial fusion reactors for power. Automated manufacturing systems capable of producing large-scale components. if we network them together and coordinate their operations. You want to turn mining stations into a stellar engineering project, said with something approaching awe. Use their mass drivers to inject counteracting materials into the star's core. It's theoretically possible, Maya confirmed. But it would require perfect timing, coordinated targeting from multiple stations, and the manufacture of exotic matter variants we've never produced before. In's golden eyes gleamed with predatory interest. Estimated probability of success. Maya ran the calculations again, checking her work against known astrophysical models. Approximately 11%, and that assumes we can hack the mining station's control systems, coordinate their operations across 3 light towers of distance, and manufacture the correct exotic matter compounds on the first attempt. 11%, repeated grimly. Against guaranteed death for 25 million beings if we stick to standard evacuation. The mathematics are clear, agreed reluctantly. But the technical challenges are enormous. We would need to accomplish tasks that typically require specialized teams working for months, and we have less than 6 hours. Maya studied her teammates' faces, seeing the mixture of hope and doubt in their expressions. Each species brought different capabilities to the problem, but success would require perfect integration of their diverse approaches. We can do it, she said quietly, though her voice carried absolute conviction. But only if we stop thinking like individual species and start thinking like a team. His tongue flicked out nervously. Explain. Tactical analysis is unmatched for complex system coordination, Maya began, looking at. Your people can calculate optimal targeting solutions and timing sequences faster than any computer. His mandibles clicked with cautious interest. Sensory capabilities can monitor stellar conditions in real time and detect changes faster than any instrument, Maya continued, turning to. Your enhanced perception could provide the feedback necessary to adjust our approach on the fly. The serpentine alien's scales shimmered with what might have been pleased attention. Draconian strategic thinking excels at large-scale resource management and crisis leadership, Maya said to In. Your people have a proven ability to coordinate massive operations under impossible pressure. The massive alien's expression remained unreadable, but his posture suggested he was listening carefully. And humans, prompted, what do we bring to this impossible project? Maya's smile carried no warmth as she answered. We bring the willingness to attempt solutions that everyone else knows are impossible. For a moment, the bridge was silent except for the hum of simulated systems and the soft flow of data across multiple displays. Each cadet was processing not just the technical requirements of Maya's proposal, but the fundamental shift in thinking it required. You're asking us to abandon proven evacuation procedures in favor of an untested theoretical approach with an 11% success rate, said finally. Yes. Based on technology we've never used, exotic physics we barely understand, and coordination between systems that were never designed to work together. Yes. While working against a deadline that allows no margin for error or second attempts. Yes. His exoskeleton clicked in what might have been amusement. Your species truly is insane. Completely, Maya agreed cheerfully. Vin rumbled deep laughter, the sound filling the bridge like distant thunder. I begin to understand why humans have such an interesting military record. Very well, cadet, we attempt your impossible solution. The next 5 hours became a blur of coordinated activity that pushed each team member beyond their normal capabilities. Tar worked with machine-like precision, calculating trajectory solutions for 17 different mass drivers while accounting for stellar gravitational effects, relativistic corrections, and the changing position of the target star. Stationed herself at the sensor array, her enhanced nervous system allowing her to process real-time data from across the system while monitoring the star's condition for any sign that their intervention was having an effect. Vin took command of the mining station network, using draconian strategic protocols to coordinate resource allocation and manufacturing priorities across multiple automated facilities. His natural authority translated effectively through communication systems, somehow compelling obedience from artificial intelligences that weren't designed to recognize leadership hierarchies. Worked with Maya to hack the mining station's control systems and reprogram their manufacturing capabilities for exotic matter production. The task required combining human intuition about system vulnerabilities with precise technical knowledge of industrial automation. Maya found herself serving as coordinator between team members, translating requirements between different species' thought patterns, and ensuring that each component of their impossible project remained synchronized with the others. First exotic matter injection in 30 minutes, reported, his calculations complete. Targeting solution achieves optimal stellar core penetration with minimal gravitational scatter. Stellar monitoring systems are detecting increased exotic matter levels in the core, confirmed. The destabilization process is beginning to slow, but we need sustained bombardment to achieve reversal. Manufacturing systems are producing exotic matter variants at projected rates, Vin added. However, several mining stations are reporting structural stress from operating beyond design parameters. Acknowledged, Maya replied, making rapid adjustments to their coordination protocols. Rotating station assignments to distribute stress loads. We only need the network to hold together for 4 more hours. The work continued with mechanical intensity. Each team member pushed to their species' limits while maintaining perfect coordination with their teammates. Gradually, impossibly, their intervention began showing results. Stellar core temperature dropping, announced with barely controlled excitement. Gravitational instabilities decreasing. The star is responding to treatment. Confirming positive results, Tar added, though his voice carried careful professional restraint. Projected timeline for system habitability now extends beyond original evacuation deadline. 3 hours later, as their exotic matter bombardment reached critical mass, Vin made the announcement they had barely dared hope for. Stellar destabilization process has reversed. The star is stabilizing at previous levels. All worlds in the sector are projected to remain habitable for their normal. Maya slumped against her console, exhaustion finally catching up with her as the adrenaline of crisis management faded. Around her, her teammates showed similar signs of fatigue mixed with triumph. They had achieved the impossible. 40 million beings would live because 5 cadets from different species had found a way to work together beyond their individual capabilities. Simulation complete, General Moore's voice announced through the chamber's speakers. Scenario concluded with optimal resolution achieved. The starship bridge faded around them, replaced by the neutral environment of the simulation chamber. General Moore stood waiting with his usual unreadable expression, though Maya thought she detected satisfaction in his golden eyes. "Congratulations," he said as the 5 cadets gathered before him. "You have accomplished something that no previous team has managed. Every other group that faced this scenario chose traditional evacuation procedures and accepted the loss of 25 million lives as unavoidable." "The 11% success rate," said with growing understanding. "You knew it was possible all along." "We knew it was theoretically possible," the general corrected. "What we didn't know was whether any group of cadets would possess the combination of technical capability, creative thinking, and species integration necessary to attempt such a solution." Tar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "This was a test of our ability to transcend species-specific limitations through effective teamwork." "Partially correct," Moore agreed. "But it was also a test of something else, something that may prove crucial for military officers serving in an increasingly complex galaxy." "Which is?" asked. The general's features might have been smiling as he answered. "The willingness to attempt solutions that logic suggests should be impossible, the kind of thinking that turns desperate situations into unexpected victories." His gaze fixed on Maya with particular intensity. "Some species have a natural inclination toward such approaches. Others can learn to recognize their value when working in mixed teams. All of you demonstrated that capability today." As they left the simulation chamber, Maya reflected on the Academy's teaching methods. Each trial seemed designed not just to test individual capabilities, but to force cadets to discover new ways of thinking about problems and solutions. She was beginning to understand that the Academy wasn't just training military officers. They were developing leaders who could function effectively in situations where traditional approaches failed and only creative collaboration offered hope for success. The next trial awaited, and Maya suspected it would challenge everything they thought they had learned about the relationship between individual capability and team effectiveness. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They had saved 40 million lives by refusing to accept that the impossible was actually impossible. It was, she reflected, a very human way of approaching problems, and her teammates from other species were beginning to understand why that approach might have value in an uncertain galaxy. The Academy's combat evaluation arena stretched beneath Prime's artificial night sky, its surface by decades of training exercises that had tested thousands of cadets. Defensive barriers rose from the ground in geometric patterns, creating a maze of obstacles and tactical positions that could be reconfigured at will. Weapon emplacements emerged from hidden positions, their targeting systems already tracking the assembled cadets with mechanical precision. Maya checked her gear one final time, noting the weight distribution of her primitive kinetic weapons against the advanced energy systems carried by her fellow cadets. The previous trials had taught her the value of simple solutions, but this test would be different. Here, raw combat capability would matter as much as creative thinking. Only 27 cadets remained after 2 days of trials. Each test had eliminated those who couldn't adapt, couldn't work effectively with other species, or couldn't find solutions when conventional approaches failed. The survivors represented the best candidates from across the galaxy, but Maya suspected the Academy's most challenging test still lay ahead. "Final trial," announced Commander as he addressed the gathered cadets. The veteran's exoskeleton gleamed under the arena's harsh lighting, each mark a testament to real combat experience. Individual combat assessment under adverse conditions. Each cadet will face a scenario designed to test not just fighting ability, but tactical thinking, adaptability, and mental resilience when standard doctrine fails. He gestured toward the arena's complex terrain, where defensive positions and weapon systems created overlapping fields of fire that would challenge even experienced soldiers. You will enter the arena individually. Your objective is to reach the extraction point on the far side while surviving automated defense systems, environmental hazards, and tactical challenges that adapt to your approach. The scenario is designed to be unwinnable through conventional military tactics. Several cadets exchanged nervous glances. The Academy's reputation for impossible challenges had been demonstrated repeatedly, but facing combat trials alone felt different from the cooperative problem-solving they had experienced before. "Time limit is 30 minutes, continued. "Any cadet who fails to reach extraction within that period or who suffers simulated critical injury will be eliminated from Academy consideration. Lethal force protocols are disabled, but injury simulation systems will register hits and assess combat effectiveness accurately." Maya studied the arena's layout with professional interest, noting sight lines, cover positions, and the placement of obvious threats. Her human eyes couldn't match the enhanced sensory capabilities of other species, but she had learned to compensate by focusing on patterns and anomalies that others might miss. "Cadet assignments will be random," announced, activating a holographic display that showed combat scenarios tailored to different species' capabilities. "Each trial will test your specific strengths while forcing you to overcome your natural limitations." The display cycled through various scenarios: aerial combat zones for flying species, underground tunnel networks for burrowing races, aquatic environments for water-adapted beings. Each test seemed designed to provide familiar ground while introducing unexpected complications. "Cadet called first, report to Arena Section Alpha." The Proud moved toward his assigned area with confident strides, his exoskeleton clicking softly against his equipment. Maya watched him disappear into a landscape that resembled his crystal formations, though she suspected the familiar terrain would prove more challenging than it appeared. Over the next hour, cadets entered their individual trials, while the remaining candidates observed through viewing screens that showed selected portions of each test. Maya paid careful attention to the patterns emerging from each scenario. Faced a jungle environment that seemed perfect for her serpentine abilities, but thermal imaging revealed hidden predators that forced her to abandon stealth tactics in favor of direct confrontation. Navigated an industrial complex that looked like the Titan colonies, only to discover that his familiarity with the terrain was a liability when the layout began changing around him. Each test followed the same basic principle: present cadets with scenarios that appeared to favor their species' natural advantages, then introduce complications that made those advantages irrelevant or even counterproductive. Cadet called finally, "Report to Arena Section Omega." Maya gathered her equipment and moved toward the designated area, noting that Section Omega was separated from the main arena by additional barriers and security systems. Whatever scenario awaited her, the Academy considered it different enough to require special isolation. The transition chamber sealed behind her with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. Ahead, a heavy door marked with warning symbols in multiple languages waited to admit her to the trial space. Maya took a deep breath, checked her primitive weapons one last time, and activated the door controls. The arena beyond immediate categorization. Instead of a landscape designed to resemble some specific environment, Section Omega presented what appeared to be a military installation under siege. Damaged buildings provided minimal cover, while automated weapon systems swept the area with targeting beams. Explosion impacts had cratered the ground, creating obstacles that would challenge movement in any direction. Most significantly, the arena was already occupied. Scattered throughout the space were what appeared to be other cadets, members of various species who seemed to be pinned down by the defensive systems and unable to advance toward their objectives. Maya's tactical training immediately identified the scenario as a rescue operation rather than simple navigation. She was expected to not only reach the extraction point, but to coordinate with other beings under fire while maintaining mission effectiveness. She began moving toward the nearest apparent cadet, keeping to cover while avoiding the sweeping arcs of automated weapons. Her approach revealed the first major challenge of the scenario. The other figures weren't actually other cadets, but sophisticated holographic projections designed to simulate trapped personnel. Each projection responded to her presence with realistic distress signals and requests for assistance. Their apparent injuries and desperate situations created emotional pressure to take risks that would compromise mission success. Maya realized this was a test of leadership under pressure, specifically, the ability to make difficult decisions when lives appeared to be at stake. The extraction point lay nearly 200 meters away, across open ground swept by overlapping fields of fire from multiple automated systems. The direct route was clearly suicide, but the available cover would require exposing herself to significant risk while attempting to coordinate with the holographic survivors. Maya studied the tactical situation with growing understanding. This wasn't just a combat trial, it was a leadership assessment disguised as individual evaluation. The Academy wanted to see how she would balance mission objectives against the apparent welfare of others. She began moving methodically through the arena, using cover effectively while approaching each holographic figure. Instead of attempting immediate rescue, she took time to assess their apparent conditions and tactical positions. The behavior she observed told her everything she needed to know about the scenario's true nature. "Medical emergency here," called one projection, assimilated with apparent burns across its scaled hide. "I can't move without assistance." Maya knelt beside the projection, but instead of attempting rescue, she studied the surrounding terrain. The injured was positioned in a location that would require exposing herself to crossfire from 3 different weapon systems to provide assistance. "I understand," she told the projection calmly. "I'm going to get help, stay down, and keep pressure on that wound." The projection responded with programmed gratitude, but Maya was already moving toward the next apparent casualty. Each hologram was positioned to create a tactical dilemma that would test different aspects of leadership decision-making. A wounded begged for immediate evacuation, claiming critical damage to his exoskeleton. A trapped Draconian appeared to be pinned under debris near a position that controlled access to the extraction route. A dying human called for medical attention while positioned in a location that offered excellent tactical advantage if she could reach it. Maya spent precious minutes analyzing each situation, but her approach remained consistent. Acknowledge the apparent need, provide reassurance, but avoid tactical positions that would compromise mission success for the sake of individual rescue operations. 20 minutes into the trial, she had identified the scenario's true objective. This wasn't about combat skills or tactical movement. It was about command decisions under pressure. The Academy wanted to see if she could maintain mission focus when faced with emotional manipulation designed to cloud her judgment. The revelation changed her approach completely. Instead of treating the projections as rescue objectives, she began treating them as intelligence sources and tactical assets. "Listen carefully," she told the wounded. "I need you to provide covering fire when I signal. Can you handle your weapon?" The projection's programming adapted to her command, shifting from helpless victim to potential ally. "Yes, sir. What's the plan?" Maya began coordinating the holographic figures as if they were actual personnel under her command. The trapped Draconian could provide suppressive fire against specific weapon systems. The injured could serve as a spotter for threats she couldn't see from ground level. The dying human could coordinate timing for a coordinated advance. Instead of attempting to rescue helpless casualties, Maya was building an impromptu strike team from available resources. The approach proved dramatically effective. By treating the projections as tactical assets rather than rescue objectives, she could coordinate suppressive fire that neutralized the automated weapon systems while providing cover for movement toward the extraction point. "Advance by teams," she commanded, using hand signals to coordinate movement. "Overwatch provides covering fire while assault elements move to next position." The holographic projections responded to her leadership with military precision, their apparent injuries becoming irrelevant compared to their tactical contributions. Maya realized that this was the scenario's hidden lesson. Effective commanders find ways to use available resources regardless of their apparent limitations. With coordinated suppressive fire from her improvised team, Maya reached the extraction point with 7 minutes remaining. The automated weapon systems continued their mechanical sweeping patterns, but their targeting protocols hadn't accounted for coordinated small-unit tactics that used multiple positions simultaneously. As she activated the extraction beacon, the arena's defensive systems powered down and the holographic projections faded. Maya stood alone in the suddenly quiet space, processing what she had learned about command responsibility and tactical flexibility. "Trial complete," announced a voice from the arena's speaker system. "Cadet, report to the command observation deck." Maya made her way out of Section Omega and toward the elevated platform where Academy instructors had been monitoring the trials. She found General or waiting with Commander and several other senior officers whose species she didn't recognize. "Cadet," the General greeted her with something that might have been approval. "Your approach to the combat scenario was unique among this group of candidates." "Thank you, sir," Maya replied carefully, unsure whether the observation was positive or critical. "Tell me," or continued, "at what point did you realize the scenario's true objective?" Maya considered the question carefully. "Approximately 15 minutes in, sir. The positioning of the casualties and the tactical demands of rescue operations made it clear that traditional rescue doctrine would result in mission failure." "And how did you resolve that tactical dilemma?" "By changing my definition of rescue, sir. Instead of evacuating casualties from the battlefield, I integrated them into tactical operations that achieved mission objectives while maintaining their combat effectiveness." Commander's mandibles clicked with what might have been amusement. Most cadets attempted either direct rescue operations that resulted in simulated casualties or mission focus that ignored the apparent wounded entirely. Your approach was the only one that achieved both mission success and casualty preservation. "Every other cadet treated the scenario as individual combat assessment," added another instructor. "You treated it as command training and adapted accordingly." General or studied Maya with those penetrating golden eyes. "Explain your reasoning for that interpretation." Maya organized her thoughts carefully before responding. The scenario was designed to create emotional pressure that would compromise tactical judgment. However, the pressure only existed if I accepted responsibility for the welfare of the other figures. That suggested the real test was leadership decision-making under stress. Continue. Once I recognized it as a command scenario, the tactical solution became clear. Use available assets to achieve mission objectives while maintaining team cohesion. The apparent injuries became irrelevant compared to each figure's tactical contribution. "Interesting perspective," or mused. "And what do you believe this trial was designed to teach?" Maya thought about the question in the context of everything she had learned during the Academy trials. Each test had challenged assumptions about strength, effectiveness, and the relationship between individual and team capabilities. That command effectiveness depends on the ability to see potential rather than limitations, she said finally. A good commander finds ways to use available resources regardless of their apparent condition or conventional roles. Excellent analysis, Cadet. You have demonstrated something that many experienced officers struggle to learn. True leadership adapts to circumstances rather than demanding that circumstances adapt to predetermined plans. The general paused, his expression becoming more serious. There is, however, one additional lesson embedded in this trial, something that becomes particularly relevant for human officers serving in mixed-species units. Sir, your species has a documented tendency to attempt impossible solutions and refuse to accept defeat even when logic indicates surrender would be appropriate. This trial tested whether you could balance that tendency with sound, tactical judgment. Maya felt a chill of understanding. The Academy had been testing whether human stubbornness could be channeled into effective leadership rather than dangerous recklessness. By treating apparent casualties as tactical assets rather than rescue objectives, you demonstrated the ability to make difficult command decisions without abandoning responsibility for your personnel, or continued. That balance between determination and judgment is essential for officers who will face situations where conventional solutions are inadequate. Commander stepped forward with what appeared to be an official data tablet. Cadet, you have successfully completed all Academy entrance trials with distinction. Your performance demonstrated not only individual capability, but the kind of adaptive thinking that produces exceptional military leaders. Maya felt a wave of relief and satisfaction that threatened to overwhelm her professional composure. 3 days of trials had tested every aspect of her capabilities, while forcing her to question fundamental assumptions about strength, teamwork, and effective leadership. However, General Orr added, your real education begins now. The trials were designed to identify cadets with the potential for greatness. The next 4 years will determine whether that potential becomes reality. As Maya left the arena complex, she reflected on everything she had learned during the Academy's entrance trials. Each test had been designed not just to evaluate capability, but to challenge preconceptions about what made individuals and teams effective. She had arrived at the Academy as a representative of supposedly the weakest species in the galaxy. She was leaving as a cadet who had demonstrated that weakness and strength often existed in unexpected places, and that the most important military capability might be the willingness to find solutions when everyone else believed none existed. The Academy's towers rose around her like monuments to military excellence, filled with cadets from across the galaxy who had proven themselves worthy of the institution's demanding standards. Maya took her place among them with quiet confidence, ready to begin the real work of becoming the kind of officer the galaxy would need in the challenges ahead. Behind her, new transport ships were arriving with another group of hopeful cadets, each convinced that their species' particular advantages would ensure success in the Academy's trials. Maya smiled quietly, knowing that they were about to learn some very interesting lessons about the difference between advantages and capabilities. The Academy's teaching methods were thorough, demanding, and utterly effective. By the time cadets graduated, they would understand that true military effectiveness came not from natural gifts or advanced technology, but from the ability to adapt, cooperate, and find solutions when conventional approaches failed. It was, Maya reflected, a very human way of thinking about problems, and the Academy was teaching that approach to the future leaders of galactic civilization. The implications of that education would reshape military doctrine throughout the galaxy in ways that few could imagine. But that was a lesson for another day. For now, Maya, the human girl who had been taunted for her species' supposed weakness, walked toward her dormitory assignment as a successful Academy cadet, whose name would indeed be spoken with awe by future generations. 10 years had passed since Maya walked through the Academy's gates as a cadet who had proven that human weakness could become galactic strength. Now she stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable Will, wearing the insignia of a fleet admiral and bearing the weight of decisions that would determine the fate of entire civilizations. The Void War had erupted 3 years earlier, when a species known as the Harvesters emerged from tears in spacetime itself. Their technology so advanced that conventional military responses proved worse than useless. Traditional fleet tactics, energy weapons, and even quantum-level defenses had been easily countered by beings who seemed to exist partially outside normal reality. 17 major star systems had fallen before the Galactic Defense Force acknowledged that everything they understood about warfare had become obsolete overnight. The Academy's teachings about adaptability and impossible solutions suddenly became more than academic exercises. They became the foundation for humanity's last desperate strategy. Admiral reported commander from his position at the tactical station. This exoskeleton bore the scars of 3 major engagements against Harvester forces, and his voice carried the grim certainty of someone who had seen conventional military doctrine crumble under alien assault. Harvester scout ships detected at the edge of sensor range, he continued. Configuration suggests a full battle fleet approximately 6 hours behind the advance elements. The colonies have perhaps 8 hours before the main attack begins. Maya studied the tactical display with the same methodical calm she had shown as a cadet facing impossible trials. The Harvester fleet represented technology that could manipulate dimensional barriers, phase through conventional matter, and deploy weapons that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. Everything about them violated the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic military science. "Status of evacuation efforts?" she asked quietly. "Minimal progress," replied from her position at the sensor array. The officer's enhanced perception allowed her to process data from across multiple dimensional layers, making her invaluable for tracking enemies who didn't exist entirely in normal space. Civilian transports can evacuate perhaps 10% of the population before the Harvesters arrive. The rest. She didn't finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge understood the mathematics of the situation. 200 million beings would die unless they found an alternative to evacuation. "Conventional fleet elements," Maya prompted. "Admiral In's task force is holding position at the outer system boundary," reported from the communications station. The human officer's integration of multiple species' tactical approaches had made him Maya's most trusted coordinator for mixed-species operations. "His force can delay the Harvesters for perhaps 30 minutes before suffering critical casualties," he continued. "Draconian battle doctrine provides maximum possible resistance, but the enemy's dimensional phasing capabilities make sustained engagement impossible." Maya nodded, absorbing the tactical reality that had haunted her for 3 years of increasingly desperate warfare. The Harvesters could exist partially outside normal space, making them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons while the legends were just beginning. She had a feeling that the lessons were just beginning. Maya smiled quietly to herself, already looking forward to the lessons about to begin.